I used to think our life was solid. Not perfect. No marriage is perfect, but steady. We had our routines, our little rituals, the kind of habits that build up without you even noticing. Every morning, she'd be the first one out of bed. I always teased her about it, told her she had some secret deal with the sunrise. I'd wake up to the smell of coffee drifting in from the kitchen, the faint whistle of the kettle, and her soft footsteps on the hardwood floor. Sometimes I'd just lie there, eyes half closed, listening to the small sounds of our home coming alive. There's a kind of comfort in that, knowing the same things will happen in the same order, day after day. We had this Sunday tradition, coffee in bed. Nothing fancy, no elaborate breakfast spreads like in the movies. Just two mugs, side by side, steam curling into the morning light. The curtains never quite met in the middle, so there'd always be this thin blade of sunlight cutting across the floor, lighting up the dust motes like tiny floating stars. I used to think those mornings weren't ours, private, untouchable. She'd hand me my mug, always black, no sugar, and I'd watch her settle in, pulling her knees to her chest, cradling her own cup like it was something fragile. We didn't talk much during those mornings. Sometimes we'd read. Sometimes we'd just sit there in silence, letting the warmth seep into our hands. It felt safe. I remember one morning, maybe 6 months ago, she leaned her head on my shoulder while I read the news on my phone.
Ow.
Of those deep, contented sighs that says, I'm exactly where I want to be. And I believed her. I believed every bit of it. I stored that moment away without knowing how much I'd replay it later, trying to figure out if it had been real. Our evenings were just as predictable. Dinner around 7, usually something quick, pasta, stir-fry, whatever we could make. While talking about our day, she'd tell me about the new intern at work or the funny thing her coworker said. I'd tell her about the chaos at my office. After dinner, we'd watch something on Netflix, her head in my lap, me absent-mindedly playing with her hair. People always say if something's wrong, you'll feel it. But I didn't. Not then. I was content. I thought she was too. There were no cracks I could see. It's strange how the mind works, though. Looking back, I can spot tiny details that I missed in the moment. The way she'd sometimes zone out, staring into her coffee like it held answers. Or how she'd laugh at something I said, but her eyes wouldn't quite match the smile. Back then, I brushed it off. I figured everyone had quiet days, moments when they were somewhere else in their head. But at that time, I was happy.
Really?
Happy. And that's probably the cruelest thing about it. You don't realize you're in the before until you're already deep into the after. I remember one night especially, it was raining, hard. We'd just finished dinner. And the sound of water hitting the windows filled the room. She was sitting on the couch in one of my old hoodies, her legs tucked under a blanket. I sat beside her, and she leaned into me. And for a brief second, I had this thought. This is it. This is all I need. It's ridiculous how fast life can twist. How you can go from that kind of quiet certainty to everything else that came after. If I close my eyes, I can still feel the weight of that blanket, smell the coffee from those Sunday mornings, hear the soft whistle of the kettle. Those little things, the ones that seem so ordinary at the time, they're the things that haunt you, because they're proof that there was something worth holding on to. Back then, I didn't know a storm was coming. I didn't know the person sitting across from me in the morning light would become someone I didn't recognize. I thought we were safe. I thought love was enough. Turns out, I was wrong. It didn't happen all at once. If it had, maybe I would have noticed sooner. But it was slow, like the air in the room changing degree by degree, so gradually that by the time you feel cold, you're already shivering. The first thing I remember was how she stopped reaching for my hand at night. We used to fall asleep, tangled together, her hand on my chest, my arm around her waist. Then, one night, she just rolled over, said she was exhausted from work, that her head hurt. I remember lying there in the dark, the sound of rain tapping against the window, and the faint glow of her phone screen lighting up her face. I could see her eyes moving, scrolling. I didn't think much of it. People unwind in their own ways, right? I told myself she was just checking Instagram, maybe reading messages from her friends. But that night became 2, then 3, then a week. The space between us in bed felt bigger somehow. I'd roll over, hoping she'd turn toward me, but she'd stay facing the other way. The light from her phone like a small, stubborn moon. At first, I didn't question it. We'd been together long enough that I knew there were ebbs and flows. Busy seasons at work, stress, family stuff. I trusted her. Completely in trust makes you explain things. Oh wait, when she brushed past me in the kitchen without that little kiss on the shoulder she used to give, I told myself she was distracted. When she skipped movie night to go to bed early, I told myself she just needed rest. I still tried to bridge the gap. I'd bring her tea when she was reading, or rub her shoulders while she worked on her laptop. Sometimes she'd smile and thank me, but the warmth in her eyes wasn't quite the same. It was like trying to touch someone through a glass wall. One night, I asked if something was wrong. She laughed, this light, almost amused laugh, and said, "Of course not. You worry too much." And I believed her. Or maybe I wanted to. Believe her so badly that I ignored the small knot forming in my chest. There was a night I can't forget. We were lying in bed, both quiet, and I reached for her hand under the blanket. She didn't pull away, but she didn't hold mine either. Just let it rest there for a moment before gently moving it back toward me. No explanation, no words. Remember staring at the ceiling after she drifted off, my mind replaying the motion in slow motion. Was I imagining it? Was I overthinking? I told myself I was being paranoid, that she just wanted to sleep. It's strange, I didn't feel anger. Then, just a dull, quiet confusion. Like standing in a familiar room, but noticing the furniture has been moved just slightly. Everything's still there, but it feels wrong. Looking back now, I can pinpoint that as the first real sign. The moment the distance started to grow, but at the time I didn't recognize it for what it was. I thought love meant patience. That if I just waited, the warmth would come back on its own. I didn't know it was already slipping away. Time has a way of turning small cracks into wide gaps. What started as a few quiet nights in bed became a pattern I couldn't ignore, though I tried. She started coming home later. At first, she had explanations. Traffic was terrible, or I had to finish something at work. I believed her. Of course I did. But after a while, the reasons became vaguer. Just busy, she'd say. Tossing her bag onto the couch and heading straight to the bedroom. The phone, too. It changed. She used to leave it lying around without a second thought. Screen face up on the counter. Now it was always in her pocket or flipped over. She'd set it down screen side down, like she didn't want the light to catch my eye. If a notification came through, she'd glance at it quickly, swipe it away, and put the phone back down without a word. Dinner was the worst. We used to linger at the table, talking about our day, sometimes so long the food went cold. But now, I remember one. Evening pasta, her favorite. She sat across from me, her fork moving in lazy circles, barely lifting the food to her mouth. She wasn't looking at me, just sort of past me, like she was in another room entirely. The only sounds were the faint clink of cutlery against the plate and the ticking of the wall clock. I tried to fill the silence, telling her about something funny that had happened at work. She smiled politely, the way you smile at a stranger in an elevator, and said, "That's nice." Then she went back to staring at her plate. It's a strange kind of loneliness, sitting across from the person you love and feeling like they're already gone. Nights became more unpredictable. Sometimes she'd go to bed early without saying, "Good night." Other times she'd stay up in the living room, the flicker of her phone screen visible from the hallway as I passed by. I'd think about asking who she was talking to, but the question always caught in my throat. I didn't want to sound accusatory. I didn't want to push her further away. I told myself she was stressed. Work deadlines, maybe family drama she wasn't ready to talk about. I reminded myself that relationships have seasons, and maybe we were just in a colder one, but deep down I could feel something shifting. Not all at once, more like a tide going out. It's so slowly that you don't notice until you're standing on dry sand. It's wondering where the water went. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me, but not in the way she used to. There was no softness in it, more like she was evaluating something, weighing it. And when our eyes met, she'd look away quickly. There was a Saturday afternoon when she said she had errands to run. She was gone for hours. She came back. She didn't have any shopping bags. I asked if she found what she needed, and she said, yeah, mostly. Before disappearing into the bedroom, I wanted to believe her. I really did. So I clung to the hope that things would go back to normal, that one morning I'd wake up, and the warmth in her eyes would be there again. But hope can be a dangerous thing. It can make you ignore what's right in front of you. It was a Tuesday morning, nothing special. I was sitting at the kitchen table, still half asleep, staring into my coffee like it might offer me the motivation to face the day. She was across from me, hair still damp from the shower, scrolling on her phone. The kettle hissed in the background. It's the hum of the fridge filling the silence. It was just normal, or at least our new version of normal. Quiet, distant, polite. Then she put her phone down, looked at me and said, I think we should have a baby. Just like that, no build-up, no hesitation. I remember my hand freezing. Halfway to my mug, the steam curled up into the space between us, and for a second the world felt muted. Her words hung in the air like they were too heavy to fall. I didn't answer right away. Couldn't, my brain was still stuck on the fact that this was the same woman who had turned away from me in bed for months, who had made excuses, who had avoided my touch, who seemed to be drifting further every day. And now, she wanted a child. Finally managed to say, a baby, like I'd never heard the word before. She smiled, this small, deliberate smile, and nodded. I asked why. Not in a challenging way, just genuinely trying to understand. She shrugged. It feels like the right time. We've been married long enough. That's what she said. But there was something in her eyes, something I couldn't name then, that made my stomach twist. I tried to joke it off. Funny timing, I said, forcing a laugh. We've barely. I trailed off before I finished the sentence. Because what was the point? She knew. I knew. We both knew we hadn't been close in months. She changed the subject quickly after that. Was talking about baby names, about friends who just had kids. Her voice was animated in a way I hadn't heard in a long time, but it didn't feel like excitement. It felt like performance. The rest of the day, I couldn't shake the thought. If she didn't want me in that way anymore, why would she suddenly want us to bring a child into the world? That was the first time my confusion shifted into something sharper, a suspicion I didn't want to acknowledge. I kept replaying that moment at the table, her words, the way she said them, the quick smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, the sound of the spoon clinking against my cup as I stirred coffee I never actually drank. It was like being handed a puzzle piece that didn't fit anywhere, but realizing, deep down, that maybe it belonged to a different picture altogether. I've always trusted my instincts. It's not in a dramatic, psychic powers kind of way. Just, you know when something doesn't sit right. It's like an itch in the back of your mind. You can't quite scratch after the baby conversation. That itch became constant. It wasn't just that she'd changed. It was the way she'd changed. Suddenly she was lighter, smiling more, humming to herself while making coffee in the morning, checking her phone and grinning like she'd just remembered a private joke. The irony? None of that cheerfulness was directed at me. One night, I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard her phone buzz.
Ow.
It was late, close to midnight. She was still in the living room. I rolled over and saw the light from her phone glowing in the hallway. I walked out quietly, just enough to see her sitting cross-legged on the couch, face lit by the screen. She was smiling. Not a polite smile, not a fake one, but that soft, a genuine smile I hadn't seen in months. I called her name softly and she jumped, literally jumped. Then she tilted the phone away from me so fast it was almost comical. Hey, she said, like she hadn't just been caught doing something she didn't want me to see. I asked what she was looking at. She shrugged. Just a funny video, but she didn't offer to show me. From then on, I started noticing little things. How she'd tilt the phone toward her body when a message came in. How she'd laugh quietly to herself and then type with both thumbs fast. How she suddenly had late meetings that didn't seem to leave her stressed the way they used to. Even her routines shifted. She started caring more about her appearance before going out. Fresh makeup for a quick trip to the store. Perfume just to grab groceries. It wasn't the kind she wore for me either. It was different, sharper, more expensive. It's a strange place to be, halfway between suspicion and denial. Part of me wanted to believe I was imagining it, that my mind was playing tricks on me because of the months of distance. But another part already knew I wasn't wrong. I started cataloging the moments without meaning to. Every laugh at a text, every unexplained late night, every quick switch from cheerful to distracted when she realized I was watching. The worst part was the quiet. She wasn't being cruel or even distant anymore. She was just elsewhere. I could feel her slipping away, piece by piece, and there was nothing I could grab onto. That's the thing about a gut feeling. It doesn't come with proof. It's just this heavy, unshakable certainty in your chest. And once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. I didn't go full detective overnight. It started small, just paying closer attention, listening a little more closely when she talked about her day, watching how she reacted to her phone. And the more I noticed, the harder it became to pretend everything was fine. Her late meetings seemed to happen more often, but never on the same days. When I asked how they went, she'd give me these vague two-sentence answers and then change the subject. Sometimes she'd even ask me something right after, like she was trying to redirect the conversation before I could push further. I started tracking the details in my head. She'd leave wearing one outfit, but come home with her hair slightly different, like it had been touched or maybe fixed. Her lipstick, the one that used to wear off by mid-morning, somehow looked fresher at night than when she left in. The morning then, there was the cologne. One evening, she walked in the door and it hit me before she even spoke, a scent I didn't recognize. Not her perfume, not mine. Something deeper, muskier, undeniably masculine. It clung to her clothes, faint but distinct. She brushed past me, saying she was starving, heading straight to the kitchen. But my eyes stayed on her shirt collar, the faint shadow of creases like it had been held. I didn't say anything, just filed it away with all the other pieces. Social media, too, started telling its own story. She used to post pictures of us, or at least tag me in things. Now, nothing. Her accounts were quieter. But every now and then I'd see a new follower pop up, someone I didn't know, no mutual friends. I'd click their profile and find nothing public. Just a name and a picture I couldn't place. It wasn't proof, not yet, but it was. A trail. And the more I looked, the more it all seemed to line up. The new perfume, the late nights, the sudden bursts of happiness, followed by guarded silence. Even her schedule started making a kind of sense, but not the kind she thought. I'd figure out. She'd have meetings on nights I knew certain bars or restaurants were less crowded, nights where it'd be easy to blend in, to not be seen. I didn't want to believe it, but the pieces were forming a picture I couldn't ignore. And the worst part, I wasn't even angry yet. I was just tired. Tired of pretending I didn't notice. Tired of being the only one in the room who was still playing the part. There's a moment when suspicion turns into realization. It's not dramatic. It's not a lightning bolt. It's quiet, heavy, like a door clicking shut in your head. Once it's closed, you can't go back to not knowing. I think deep down, I already knew. By the time it happened, the pieces were already in place. All I needed was the final one. It came on a night she said she had to work late. I stayed home, half watching some mindless TV, scrolling through my laptop. She'd left her tablet on the coffee table, face down, like she always did now. I didn't plan to look. I really didn't. But a notification buzzed across the screen. The sound too close to ignore. Just a name one I didn't recognize in the first line of a message. Last night was amazing. My stomach dropped. I told myself not to open it, that I'd regret it, but my hands moved before my brain caught up. The screen unlocked easily. She'd never bothered to change the code on the tablet. The conversation was right there. No subtlety. Just pages of messages, words I didn't want to read but couldn't stop scanning. Jokes, flirtation, plans to meet again. And then the part that made my hands shake. her saying she couldn't wait until the baby talk worked. It took me a second to process it. The baby talk was for him, not for me. A way to explain away a pregnancy that wouldn't have been mine. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heartbeat pounding so loud it drowned out the TV. My ears rang. Like the world had gone slightly underwater. I don't remember how long I stayed there, scrolling through those messages, each one hitting harder than the last. My hands felt cold, my face felt hot. I could see my own reflection in the black border of the screen, pale, blank, like I was watching this happen to someone else at some point. I realized my coffee from earlier was still sitting next to me, untouched, cold. The smell was faint now, replaced by that metallic tang you get in the back of your throat when adrenaline floods your system. It wasn't anger yet. Anger is sharp. This was different. Heavy. Like someone had dropped a weight on my chest, and I couldn't push it off. The truth was simple and ugly. She'd been seeing someone else for months. In all the distance, the sudden cheerfulness. The request for a baby, it had nothing to do with us. I put the tablet down carefully, like I was afraid it would break under my hands. But the damage was already done. You'd think you'll scream when you find out, or throw something, or demand answers right away. But I just sat there, staring at the dark TV screen, listening to the hollow sound of my own breathing. She came home around 9 that night. I was still sitting at the kitchen table, lights low, the only sound the ticking of the wall clock. The tablet was in front of me, screen dark, but I'd left the messages open. When she walked in, she smiled. That same smile she'd been giving me for months, the one that didn't reach her eyes. She said something about traffic, about how she was starving. I didn't answer. I just gestured to the chair across from me. Sit. The way I said it must have been different because she froze for a second before putting her bag down and slowly taking the seat. Her eyes flicked to the tablet on the table, then back to me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw accusations like darts. I just told her I knew every detail, every message, every lie. Her face changed so fast I almost didn't catch it, a flicker of shock, then panic, then something like calculation. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Finally, she said, "It's not what you think." Silence answered for me. The clock ticked on. Her eyes darted away to the floor, to the counter, anywhere but my face. I slid the tablet toward her. The screen lit up, our faces bathed in that cold blue glow, and there it was, her own words. Staring back at her, her face crumpled. Not in guilt in being caught. She started talking then, fast tripping over her own sentences. Something about feeling neglected, about needing comfort, about it not meaning anything, about me misunderstanding the baby talk. But every word just sounded like static. The truth was sitting right there between us, and no amount of excuses or tears could make it disappear. I told her that. I told her I didn't want a performance. I didn't want apologies crafted for sympathy. I wanted honesty, and she couldn't give it. There was a long pause after that. She wiped at her face, and I just sat there, arms crossed, my jaw tight. The anger wasn't loud. It was quiet, controlled. The kind that burns hotter because it doesn't spill over. When she finally met my eyes, I said, "We're done." Just those 2 words. She didn't argue. The clock kept ticking. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was replaying her words, but because I didn't need to. I'd already heard enough to last me a lifetime. By morning, the decision was made. No shouting match, no drawn-out working on things, no hoping she'd suddenly become someone. She wasn't. The air in the apartment felt different, heavier, like it had absorbed every lie. I stood in the bedroom doorway for a moment, looking at the space we'd shared for years. The bed was still unmade from the night before. Her side looked untouched. Mine felt like a stranger's. I pulled out a duffel bag from the closet. Suitcase this time. This wasn't a vacation or a business trip. This was leaving. Clothes went in first. Just enough for a week or two. My phone charger. A few personal things. It's funny how fast you realize most of your life fits into one bag when you're not planning on coming back. From the kitchen, I could hear her phone buzzing every few minutes. She was sitting at the table, scrolling, head down, not a single word to me. I zipped the bag slowly. The sound felt like it filled the whole apartment. That last zip always sounds different when you know you're closing a chapter. Walking to the door, I didn't bother with a dramatic pause or one last look at her. I just set my keys on the counter. No note, no speech. Just the sound of them hitting the wood. The door clicked shut behind me. For the first time in months, I could actually breathe. Outside, the sunlight was sharp, almost too bright after so many days in dim rooms and half-truths. The street was alive with the hum of morning traffic, the smell of fresh coffee from the cafe down the block. I kept walking, duffel slung over my shoulder, every step feeling lighter than the last. Sometimes dignity isn't about winning an argument, it's about knowing when to stop giving someone the chance to hurt you. And I was done. It's been a while now. Long enough that her face is no longer the first thing that comes to mind when I wake up. Long enough that the hurt has stopped feeling fresh and started feeling like something from a different life. I won't lie, in the early days, the silence was loud. The apartment felt too big. The nights felt too long. I'd catch myself staring at my phone, wondering if she'd text, if she'd try to explain again. Sometimes she did. I didn't answer. People talk about forgiveness like it's something you do for the other person, but I learned it's something you do for yourself. Forgiving her didn't mean letting her back in, it meant I didn't carry her choices around like a weight anymore. I started doing things alone again. Sunday mornings especially. I'd make coffee, sit by the window, and watch the sunlight spill across the floor. Same ritual as before, but without the tension, without the wondering. There's a kind of peace in realizing you can enjoy something without the person you once shared it with. Sometimes I think back to the way she smiled at that first text I didn't see, or the way she pushed her food around that night at dinner. All the signs I ignored because I wanted to believe in the version of us I thought we were. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that your instincts are rarely wrong. You just have to be brave enough to listen to them. Now, when I think about the future, I don't picture her. I picture open roads, quiet mornings, and people who don't make me question my worth. The betrayal will always be part of my story, but it's not the ending. If anything, it was the start of something better, the day I stopped trying to fix what someone else was determined to break. And honestly, that's freedom.